One in Newton, North Carolina, and since 1925 has called Salisbury home. We have a proud history of providing an exceptional education to our students on a campus from which students explore the world and discover their place in it. For generations, Catawba College has aimed to form the lives of students who will be good citizens and gifted leaders, people who have a zeal to enrich human life. And this is a place from which students are prepared to make the the environment who served in that capacity for 25 years and is a central figure in the unfolding story of sustainability at Catawba. And I'd like to recognize him, Dr. John Ware. John, please stand. This also happened because of many generous supporters, because of the creativity of faculty, staff, and students, and the tenacity of everyone who co-labored together to fulfill this commitment and set the stage for what is to come next. And what is coming next is to fulfill one of our bold aims for our strategic vision for Catawba College, to be the leading environmental small college in the Southeast and a national center of distinction for sustainability. It was just a few weeks ago when in Goodman Gym, our women's basketball team participated in the NCAA Division II tournament, winning the Southeast Regional Championship, advancing to the Elite Eight, and ending their season in the Final Four. And Governor Cooper, I note they were the last college basketball team in the state of North Carolina playing in the tournament. Yes. In the press conference after that Final Four game, Senior Mercedes Wampler made a statement I will never forget. When asked about the significance of that team's accomplishments, Mercedes replied, "It can be done, and it can be done at Catawba." Take that in. Whether it's Catawba's women's basketball team going all the way to the Final Four, or establishing a first-of-its-kind new genomic sequencing lab at the North Carolina Research Campus in Kannapolis this year, or achieving carbon neutrality, or being the best environmental small college in the Southeast and a national center of distinction for sustainability in our nation, well, of this and much, much more, I say with Mercedes, it can be done, and it can be done at Catawba. It is now my pleasure to introduce our Executive Director of the Center for the Environment, Brad Ives, who will come and carry on telling the story here at Catawba. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Nelson. And today is indeed an exciting day for Catawba College, for North Carolina, and most importantly for our planet. I mean, we are proud to announce that we are carbon neutral for this academic year, and we'll be carbon neutral for the future. It's an exciting announcement, and I can see the excitement in this room. It's great to hear all of this applause. But I suspect that some of you are sitting here going, what am I excited about? Well, Catawba is an institute of higher education, and we're good at explaining things. So my job is to explain to you exactly what you are excited about. So we're the first carbon neutral college in North Carolina, the first in the Southeast, and just one of 13 in the country. It's a very, very special accomplishment. And as President Nelson has noted, it's really been 3 decades in the making. Now, to achieve carbon neutrality, an entity has 2 options. One is to produce no emissions, but as you heard, our women flew to Dallas to go to the Final Four. They're not hydrogen-powered jets yet. So very hard to produce 0 emissions. So we had to opt for the other alternative. And the other alternative is to balance out the emissions that we have here on our campus and some related emissions, and find a way to reduce emissions somewhere else. And the first step in doing that is to figure out how many emissions do you have? And that's a process that started when I first arrived here in September. We needed to do an emissions assessment. So again, I'm sure you're sitting there going, what is an emissions assessment? I didn't realize I was coming to an environmental science lecture, but here we go. There are 3 types of emissions. There are scope 1 emissions, which are direct emissions, and here at Catawba, those come from the natural gas that we use to boil water, to heat buildings, and to cook. They also come from the emissions of the gas-powered vehicles that we've got. Then there's scope 2 emissions. Scope 2 emissions come from our electricity utility, burning coal and natural gas to produce some of the electricity that we use here on campus. And then finally, there's Scope 3 emissions, which are kind of everything else that we've got. Scope 3 emissions include things like our women flying to the Final Four. They include study abroad travel. They include commuting to campus. They include lots of other things. So it's a bit of a challenge to compile all of this and get it together. But the good news is that over the last 30 years, we've done a lot to squeeze these emissions down. So when we started counting them, we were counting from a smaller place. So what have we done? In the 1990s, and just an act of great foresight, we installed geothermal heating and cooling for many of our campus buildings that lowered our use of natural gas and electricity for heating and cooling. In 2015, it's very hard to see because it's all above us, all over the campus, but we installed 837 kilowatts of photovoltaic panels to provide solar power. At the same time, we installed 76 solar thermal modules capable of producing 3 million BTUs of hot water for our campus. And then we've also constructed 20,000 square feet of LEED certified buildings here on campus in our Abernathy Village. And finally, we did lots of energy efficiency projects. So all of these made a big difference. And to put that in perspective, our per full-time student equivalent emissions are less than half of those at Duke University or the University of North Carolina. So we had done all of that work to lower our emissions so that we don't have to do very much on the side of offsetting. And how did we do these offsets? Well, the first thing we did is we offset the power, the Scope 2 that I was talking about, by going to 2 solar farms in eastern North Carolina and buying the green attributes of the electricity that they were producing. Those renewable energy credits were able to offset our Scope 2 emissions. And for the Scope 3, the direct emissions, and the Scope 3, all the other stuff, we invested in a landfill gas project and near Asheville in Buncombe County. And that project is capturing the methane that comes from decaying garbage in the landfill and keeping that from going up into the atmosphere. Methane is a really, really destructive greenhouse gas. And we wanted to be very deliberate about doing these projects in North Carolina. What we've done by making those investments is we have improved air quality in the state, and we've also invested in projects that are paying property taxes in eastern North Carolina and helping build better schools there. So we wanted to keep all of this local. We could have gone for much cheaper offsets that did not impact our neighborhoods and our state, but that's not what we wanted to do, because at Catawba, character is one of our pillars, and we want to do things the right way. And at the same time that we did this, we also wanted to work with our partner, the Rocky Mountain Institute, to make sure that we were doing things absolutely the right way. This is one of the leading think tanks for environmental thought, and a very good partner for us here at Catawba. So we made sure that Rocky Mountain Institute was comfortable with taking this approach, and they thought we were securing the highest quality types of credits that we could. And we also made sure to buy more credits than we needed. We're estimating what our emissions are going to be for this year, so we bought 105% of what our estimate was, because we want to do things absolutely the right way. So carbon neutrality is a truly awesome accomplishment for Catawba, but we're really just getting started. I thought it was appropriate to paraphrase the Winston Churchill quote from the early days of World War II, that what we're experiencing here today is the end of the beginning. We are now starting to do a lot more hard work. We're actually going to do away with the amount of electricity that's creating the Scope 2 emissions by being powered 100% by renewable energy. We'll be working in the coming months to add 200 kilowatts of photovoltaic cells here on campus. Governor, we're going to be taking advantage of the program in House Bill 589 with the rebates from Duke Energy. We're also going to take advantage of funding from the federal government under the Inflation Reduction Act so that we can be 100% renewable here. We're also going to be working on our Scope 1 emissions, those direct emissions. We're going to be replacing our natural gas infrastructure. This will take longer. We're going to be replacing our vehicles that burn gas and diesel with electric vehicles as those become affordable and available here in North Carolina. And we're going to make lots of other changes in how we live. This is a big part of what we do here at Catawba, is we learn from working in our environment. And all of this is going to make sure that we have fun here. We recently bought some solar shelters made by Spotlight Solar out of Chapel Hill. They're called Havens. We were hoping to be outside so you could see them right now, but I encourage you to stop by and take a look at them. These are fun things, and they're great for the environment. They're using solar power to allow students to work with their laptops outside and enjoy the fresh air, but they're also providing an example of what incredible design looks like and how you make a difference and what you can do to create jobs here in North Carolina, making products that will be the things that we all need in the future as we move to a clean economy. So this is why I'm excited. I hope that this is why you're excited today. It's just amazing to know that we have fulfilled our commitment to second nature to be carbon neutral by 2030, and that we have done it 7 years early. But today is also the day that Catawba College launches its next chapter. We look forward to making many more exciting announcements in the coming months and years, and I look forward to sharing all of that with you. I want to thank you for embracing me as part of the Catawba family, and I want to thank you for celebrating this event today. Our next speaker is Dr. Tim Carter. I've had the pleasure of knowing Tim for the better part of a decade. We originally met at the Appalachian State Energy Conference, so it's a real honor to be able to welcome him here today to Catawba for this historic opportunity that we have. Dr. Carter is the president of Second Nature. It's a nonprofit organization that has a mission to accelerate climate action in and through higher education. As president, Dr. Carter provides strategic leadership for the organization, including focusing on decarbonization activities and climate leadership for the more than 400 schools that are in Second Nature's Climate Leadership Network and the University Climate Change Coalition. Prior to Second Nature, Dr. Carter was the founding director of Butler University's Center for Urban Ecology, where he built the center into a thriving academic center with over $3 million in externally funded initiatives. Dr. Carter received his PhD in ecology with distinction from the Odum School of Ecology at the University of Georgia, and completed his BS in ecology and evolutionary biology from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. And more importantly, while he was at the University of Tennessee, he developed some strong North Carolina connections by working at Camp High Rocks in Brevard, North Carolina, which happens to be my hometown. Dr. Carter now lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and as we discussed at dinner last night, he's an avid home coffee roaster. So please join me in extending a very warm Catawba welcome to Dr. Tim Carter.
Thanks, Brad. Great to be here. It's really nice. It's the first time I've been in Salisbury, so it's really fun to be hosted by good Southern hospitality. So I appreciate President Nelson, Brad. It was wonderful to have dinner last night. And I will say, has anybody seen the movie Air? You seen this movie? So Brad Ives is the Sonny Vaccaro of higher education climate action in North Carolina. He does all the behind-the-scenes stuff that no one really appreciates. I don't know if carbon neutrality at Catawba is equivalent with getting Michael Jordan signed on to Nike, but it's a very significant achievement. So Brad, you're very, very, very privileged to have Brad here at Catawba. So two things I really want to touch on briefly. First is celebration and then anticipation. So we're here to celebrate this important achievement, and for those of you who were listening earlier, we have run this President's Climate Leadership Commitment for 15 years. And it's the largest and longest standing voluntary carbon neutrality initiative in any sector in the world. One of the underpinnings of the commitment is that higher education needs to practice what it teaches. So our sector is really good at telling people what to do. You know, here's what our research tells us. Here's what our textbook that I wrote says. But actually doing that, actually putting that into practice is oftentimes a different story. But Catawba has not done this. You haven't treated climate action like an interesting thought experiment. You've put your thoughts actually into practice. And it's one thing to commit to action, but it's another thing to actually achieve that commitment. Since our program was launched in 2006, we've had over 800 campuses make this commitment. And only 13, as you've heard, have actually achieved it. So you're the first in North Carolina, the first in the Southeast. I was gonna say you're the first that starts with C, but Colby College actually beat you to the punch there. But still significant. And as Brad just mentioned in detail, you're not just checking the boxes. You're not just doing it as quickly and as cheaply as possible. You know, you're doing these really sophisticated and thoughtful and impactful actions that are actually not just creating practice, but actually creating best practice. And so for us as an organization, we look to places like Catawba as ways that we can replicate that activity all across the country. So that's the good stuff. It's good to celebrate that. And I want to focus a little bit on what's ahead of you. So what should you anticipate? I think the first thing to remember is that carbon neutrality is a milestone. It's not an end point. And oftentimes when we get to these points, we're like, yeah, so it's done. You know, it's over. It actually doesn't mean that. What it does mean is that achieving this important operational target it's critical, but it's not the end. And if you want to think about truly transformative action through Catawba, what you need to do is assess all the strengths that your campus has. How can you leverage all your strengths for climate action? What student activity is here? We have all these great students. What is the strength of your students? What types of research are you doing? What types of partnerships do you have? You're not the same as UNC and Duke and App State, and thank goodness for that, right? So what's your distinctive? What is the Catawba-ness of your climate leadership? And how can you leverage that to drive new and innovative climate solutions? Second nature, we call this approach diversify to unify. And the President's climate commitments have driven a lot of these decarbonization actions like what's happened here, but all across the country, a lot of our campuses have gotten to 50, 60, 70% reduction. And they've all taken the same commitment. It's this one-size-fits-all approach to carbon neutrality goals. The uniformity has been a real strength of the program, but it doesn't capture the diversity of what higher education can and should be doing on climate, especially outside of the physical infrastructure. So I would suggest the next phase of your work could be to unearth and unpack the various distinctives of Catawba. And then you can turn those distinctives into a powerful unifying force with the other institutions that you work with. So this is the essence of diversify to unify. You're not the same. You can figure out complementarity, and through that complementarity, you can figure out new ways to work together. It's this broadening of collaborative climate action that will ensure a wider swath of our sector can actually join you in your ongoing efforts, and we're here to help you accomplish that. And this leads to my final anticipation point. You've demonstrated that you're a leading decarbonization actor, so the question now is, how can you best enable action in others? How can you be an actor and an enabler? What does it look like for Catawba to help Salisbury be a leader on climate? What about Metro Charlotte? What about the state of North Carolina? What about the Southeast? How do you center new issues like climate justice and equity into your activities so you can ally with communities that are, and individuals actually, that don't have the resources that you do? Oftentimes they're the first and worst impacted by climate. What does that look like for you? I think that is really the point that you need to be focused on moving forward. It's time to take both the lessons of this journey as well as the strengths of your campus and apply them to something bigger than yourself. You're a piece of a much larger climate puzzle, and figuring out how best to fit into the future we all need to shape together is really a critical next step in your work. I'll close by saying, this accomplishment is really an inspiration, To those of us who get up every day, we have no idea what is going to come out of our programs, but it's really, really amazing to be here. We work across the country, but to be here and understand that these goals are being achieved. And it's our mission, it's why we exist, is to take your activities to scale. How can we take what you're doing here, replicate it, expand upon it, learn from it, share your stories across the country and around the world? So congratulations again, and we look forward to continuing to support your work moving forward. Thanks a lot.
Tim, thank you so much for those comments. I think it really does capture what we're trying to do here is finish up the start and get going and take on those next and bigger challenges. Well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Governor Roy Cooper. Governor Cooper is in his second term as North Carolina's 75th governor. Prior to becoming governor, he served as the 49th Attorney General of North Carolina from 2001 to 2017, and also served in the North Carolina General Assembly, both in the House and the Senate, from 1987 until 2001. I don't think it's an understatement to say that our state has probably not had a more dedicated public servant than Governor Cooper. Throughout his career, he has worked to build a stronger North Carolina where everyone has an opportunity to live in safe communities, to get a quality education, a good job, and access to affordable health care, and that's a big one. As governor, he has created tens of thousands of new jobs, a lot of these in the clean economy that is growing. He's fought to boost public education and revitalize our rural communities. But near and dear to why we are here today, Governor Cooper has also taken strong action to fight climate change and to make North Carolina a leader in the clean energy economy. He negotiated and signed landmark energy legislation that requires North Carolina utilities to reduce power generation and carbon emissions by 70% by 2030 and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. I might point out that we're a little ahead of those guys. Governor Cooper also has issued several executive orders focused on clean energy, including setting bold goals to have 1.25 million zero-emission vehicles in North Carolina, and also to have zero-emission vehicles represent 50% of sales, both of these goals, by 2030. The governor is a lifelong North Carolinian, born and raised in Nash County, where he attended the public schools and worked his summers on his family farm before earning both his undergraduate and law degrees from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he was a Morehead Cain Scholar. Please join me in welcoming Governor Roy Cooper to Catawba.
Thank you very much, Brad. Mr. President, we're talking about buying carbon credits today. I think that some of our great universities in our state need to be buying some basketball credits from Catawba College this year. Congratulations, guys. That deserves a round of applause for sure. Brad, thank you for that introduction. You have been in many sectors an environmental champion in our state, and I'm grateful for that. Working in state government, working at UNC, working in the private sector, and now leading Catawba College Center for the Environment. You're lucky to have Brad Ives, and glad that you're here and glad that I'm part of this celebration here. I saw Mayor Alexander at the League of Municipalities meeting yesterday. I don't know if she's still there, but I'm glad always to be in Salisbury. President Nelson, thank you for your leadership. I want to introduce Kevin Monroe, who is the Director of my Intergovernmental Affairs, Peter Ledford, who is my Clean Energy Director, and Sam Chan, who is with my Communications team, part of the Governor's Office here today. And I can't be in Salisbury and can't be anywhere in North Carolina without thanking Fred and Alice Standback for the amazing commitment that they have to protect clean air and water in North Carolina. And I'd like everybody to give Fred and Alice a big hand. This is a great day for this college, for our state, for our country, and really for the world when you think about it. To become the first college or university in the entire Southeast to achieve this goal is absolutely remarkable. And 7 years early shows that it can be done and can be done well and rapidly. I wanted to be here to celebrate with you because this is the kind of leadership that we see in North Carolina and that we need right now desperately. This college, the students here, the trustees, the alums, you are exhibiting the kind of vision and leadership that has been occurring in North Carolina for decades. When you think about the first state university in this country to open its doors to students, when you think about the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk, when you think about the innovative idea of the public-private partnership of the Research Triangle Park, now North Carolina is leading the way toward a clean energy future. And we're going to lift this college up and talk about the work you are doing, not only all over the state, but all over the country. Here's what we're doing in a state level on this. And I guess I need to step back a bit to talk about why this is important. I grew up in eastern North Carolina, working on the farm every summer until I went to college. It's why I decided I wanted a job with air conditioning when I grew up. But I'll never forget walking with my dad and walking through the farm and the fields and the woods, and he would tell me how important it was to him to preserve these places, preserve the natural beauty of North Carolina for generations to come. I wasn't thinking about having children then, but for your children and grandchildren, he would say. And now I'm getting that point in time where I do think about those things. And so I know just inertly that it is an important thing for us to do. But now the science is overwhelming as to what climate change is doing to our planet even more rapidly than we thought. And you are seeing the private sector react to this. The people who know, who are working to try to make money for their shareholders, understand that this is coming and that they have to brace themselves for it, but also begin to think about ways to do something about it. And in North Carolina, we have begun this process. Started out when I got elected governor, I issued Executive Order 80, which put together a broad group of stakeholders, and we said, you got to find us a path to make sure that our power sector, our utilities, can get to a 70% carbon reduction by 2030 and to get to carbon zero by 2050. And it included the utilities, the stakeholders, that they worked and talked about it and met and argued back and forth about how we could do it. But we put that plan in place, and then we had an opportunity, even with a legislature with a number of people who didn't think that climate change was something that was very important, because we had that stakeholder process, we were able to actually put that plan into law in North Carolina. And now our utilities, with our carbon plan that's being decided by the Utilities Commission, is moving more toward solar and more toward wind, while making sure we stay reliable and trying to make sure that it is at the lowest cost to consumers that's possible. And that is in law, and I'm proud of that. So now we've taken on the clean transportation sector, trying to change the transportation that we use in North Carolina to make it cleaner. And we put that plan forward. Now, you hear some people talking about, well, zero-emission vehicles, that's way off into the future. Those cars are too expensive. Everyday people can't really afford them. Where in the world am I going to charge? That's Jetson stuff. That's way off. That's not happening. I have talked to the CEOs of these major car companies. They are falling all over themselves to be first into this market and to try to buy market share to make sure that they are getting the lead here. Good old American capitalism is at work right now in the electric vehicle market. And in the next 5 years, you're going to see an explosion of electric vehicles across the country and across the world. And North Carolina needs to be in the lead. We need to make sure that we are ready for this, that we have the charging infrastructure in place. And once these cars get on the market, it's going to drive the price down. Most families, it costs $10,000 a year for their transportation. You can reduce fuel consumption costs with EVs by 80% for a family. And you bring these cars down to the price point that we need, you're going to see more people buy them. I've issued an executive order on offshore wind. We know that that is a way that we can power hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses in North Carolina. I've put forward an environmental justice order. When you think about oftentimes the places where trucks go and facilities, they are closest to people who live in poorer communities. We need to be thinking and planning that as we go forward to make sure that we protect everyone, because oftentimes when there is an environmental disaster, the people who can afford it the least get hurt the most. And so we have to continue to think about that. But let me tell you how I think the best way for us to talk about this in North Carolina and to make sure that we are getting the message across. This is an issue of dollars and cents. We know the devastating impacts of climate change, people who believe in science, but there's a lot of talk and social media about how this is a lot of bunk and that this is not really true. Well, we are going to show that this is going to put money in people's pockets. It already has. The economic argument for this is extremely strong. And even if the fight against climate change isn't something that you believe is important, you cannot deny the tremendous economic opportunity that it brings to North Carolina. Case in point, our solar industry, we're number 4 in solar installed capacity in North Carolina. It's brought more than 100,000 jobs to our state with a $20 billion investment between 2007 and 2020. The EV market is going to be a $400 billion global market in the next 5 years because the private competition is going to be fierce in this market when we see it happening. And when you talk about the jobs, we have become such a clean energy center for the country that we've been trying for decades to get an auto manufacturer in North Carolina. We couldn't do it, we couldn't do it, we couldn't do it. Finally, we did it with an EV manufacturer. And I'm a Presbyterian elder, and I know that good things got to happen out of bad things sometimes. And we were just waiting for the EV market to come to get that automobile manufacturer in North Carolina. We're getting electric battery manufacturers. We're getting electric charging station manufacturers here. We've got Boom Supersonic, which is going to be clean aerospace. And not to miss the boat, in Western North Carolina, an electric boat manufacturer has opened up out there. So across the board, people are recognizing that North Carolina is a place to come to create good North Carolina American jobs that's going to move us to the clean energy future. And that's exciting. And on top of that, we got a lot of companies who believe, like Catawba College, they want to set up their manufacturing plants to be carbon neutral. And we need to have a state and an electric grid that is welcoming to those kinds of companies that are bringing great paying jobs to our state. So I am excited today because we're going to lift this college up as doing it right. Energy efficiency is critical. And North Carolina's Building Code Council is working on putting some energy efficiency standards in place. And I'm going to point down here to these students because you guys are the future of this. Already met some of you and look forward to maybe taking a picture with you guys in just a minute to thank you personally for caring about this. We're going to have to convince people that we can't go backward. There's some talk in the General Assembly about cutting back on what we've done with our House Bill 951 in the power sector. There's talk about trying to stop the Building Code Council on energy efficiency requirements that we know are going to save people money at the end of the day. Your voices need to be strong on this. And the economic arguments can lead the way for people who aren't that concerned about climate change, which they should be, but some aren't. The economic argument can win the day. So I want to let you know that I am excited to be here, that I look forward to continuing to work with you for a cleaner, smarter, brighter North Carolina, and I look forward to what's coming next from Catawba College. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Governor Cooper, thank you again for joining us on this occasion. We so appreciate both your vision and your leadership on behalf of our state. To Brad Ives, to Tim, and a big thank you, Tim, for making the trip to be with us for this occasion. And just remember, as we told that story that goes back decades, there are a number of people, some in this room and some who are not with us for whatever reasons, who helped make this happen. It didn't just happen. It took decades of hard work. And that's what this college is all about. And carry that lesson with you. I'm supposed to invite you to a luncheon. Lunch will be served in the campus dining hall. And if you're a guest on campus, I know it's a college dining hall. You should go try it out. It's pretty good. And that is back this, if you just walk across the street and head toward the very center of campus, you'll find the Cannon Building, and the dining hall is in the basement. We'd love for you to join us there. Make yourself at home on this campus anytime, and when it's dry, you should go walk that beautiful preserve. It's a great place to be. Thank you again for joining in this celebration with us, and hope you have a great day. Thank you.